So the first cursed Polish military project we have here comes from 1935, after the State Aviation Works in Warsaw was wrapping up design work on the PZL-30 Zubr. During this time, engineer Svezbov Chelkosz would begin work on a new trainer aircraft which he referred to as the PZL-33. The PZL-33 was to be a sort of intermediate aircraft between the PWS-16, PZL-P11, and the PZL-23. Now, alongside being designed as a trainer aircraft, it was also designed as a fighter aircraft. But while calculating the performance for the PZL-33, it was found that the aircraft was unsatisfactory for fighter use and would only be produced as a trainer aircraft. During the previous year, the Polish Air Force had made it clear that they expected that new fighters and bombers would be fitted with retractable landing gear, and as a result, Chelkosz would propose retractable landing gear on his design. This would not be the first aircraft of his that would feature retractable landing gear, as the first was the PZL-27 introduced back in 1933. However, for the PZL-33, he would design a completely new landing gear system, which he would file a patent for. This new design would allow the landing wheels to be kept in a vertical position. The idea behind this was that in the case of a forced landing, even with the gear retracted, the only damage that would occur to the aircraft would be the propeller. At least in theory. The original engine proposed for the PZL-33 would be the 420 horsepower de Havilland Gypsy 12-cylinder inline engine. This engine would give the aircraft a comedically long nose. However, this engine was not found to be satisfactory and would quickly be replaced with the 430 horsepower Polish-produced G1620 Mors 2 radial engine. In order to convince some of the more senior members of the Polish Air Force who preferred the inline engine that the shift to the radial engine would be the right move, attention was drawn to the power difference between the inline and the radial engine. However, the most notable difference was the weight, with the radial engine weighing 191 kilograms less than the inline engine. Work continued on the PZL-33 until mid-1935 or early 1936 when the project was eventually cancelled, with serial production never commencing due to there just being no need for a new trainer aircraft. Interestingly, the PZL-33 would draw the attention of the Aviation Command, which ordered it be adapted to the PZL-WS Foka engine. This in turn would create the PZL-39 fighter plane. However, work on this too would later be abandoned. Now, the next oddity we have here was created at the end of the 1930s when the Polish Air Force decided it would replace the current linear squadrons with new separate reconnaissance and light bomber units in 1940 or 1941. This idea was initially proposed in 1939 under then Air Commander General Włodzimierz Rejski, in which new specialized squadrons were to be equipped with the then experimental PZL-46 Sum bomber and reconnaissance aircraft. In the spring of 1939, Aviation Command commissioned several aircraft factories to develop new reconnaissance and attack bombers which would replace the new PZL-46 in the coming future. Polish Aviation Works would create a plane they called the PZL Wasatch attack and dive bomber, as well as a long-range reconnaissance aircraft under an unspecified designation. Experimental Aeronautical Works would go for a more unconventional approach by adapting the RWD-22 into a land-based configuration, which they called the RWD-24. Work was also carried out by Podlaska Aircraft Factory, however little seems to be known of this design. In the summer of 1939, aircraft engineer Chelkosz began preliminary work on a bomber reconnaissance aircraft which was called the PWS-60 or the PWS-46. The PWS-60 is by far the most interesting of all of the others mentioned, as the PWS-60 was to feature a two-seater twin fuselage layout which was eerily similar to the much later North American P-82 twin Mustang. Now, unlike the twin Mustang, the PWS-60 would be made from a wooden monocoque structure which was covered primarily with plywood, with parts being covered by sheet metal and even canvas, and would be built with all of the latest PWS building techniques. Power for this aircraft was to be provided by two PZL Bristol engines, which were likely the Mercury 8, which would deliver a predicted top speed of 450 kilometers an hour. Firepower on the PWS-60 was to likely consist of 2 to 4 fixed machine guns mounted in the central part of the wing, with 2 small bombs being carried in the fuselage and up to 1,000 kilograms of bombs being carried on the external hooks under the center wing. Work on the design continued until September, with all work being abruptly ended due to the war's outbreak, with no prototypes ever being constructed. So our story on this aircraft begins in 1938 when a loan was granted by France for the implementation of an army modernization program which would enable purchase of the new Nyomron GR-14R Meteor engine, which had been tested earlier that year and was to enter production by 1939. Using unofficial engine data, engineer August Zdanewski would design 2 fast fighter aircraft, those being the single-seat PWS Z-36 and the 2-seater PWS Z-37. The predicted top speed of these aircraft was to be around 570 kilometers an hour. Armament of these 2 designs would consist of 4 fixed WZ-36 machine guns, as well as 200 kilograms of bombs on the Z-36, and 4 fixed WZ-36 machine guns, with 1 movable WZ-37 machine gun for the Z-37. The 2-seater version of this aircraft would feature a tail gunner and a special lowering tail in order to maximize field of fire. This incredibly strange design would later resurface on the Junkers 187. Neither of these designs seemingly went far, and very little information remains regarding them. Now, these abominations come 2 months after the liberation of Lviv by the Red Army in 1944. Future Solaris novel writer Stanisław Lem would present the Soviet People's Commissariat of Defense with a letter containing several tank concepts he had created. These concepts included things ranging from what he referred to as land battleships to small tankettes. One of these land battleship concepts consisted of a large 4-tracked tank with an enormous central turret. Lem chose the 4-track arrangement as he felt it would enable the 220-ton vehicle to move freely on extremely rough terrain, as well as being able to cross the ruins of buildings, ramparts, and anti-tank ditches. Armament for this design was nothing short of an arsenal, consisting of a main gun with a size up to 155mm, with a twin small-caliber anti-aircraft turret behind the main turret, and 4 machine guns mounted in cupolas on the 4 corners of the tank. Armor thickness for this design is unknown, but was stated to be more than adequate, with simplification of the rolled armored panels already being thought out, though this would slightly further increase the weight. There's also no mention of what would drive the tank, but it would have to be an incredibly large, incredibly powerful engine to deliver any kind of mobility. Following this land battleship concept were 2 tankette designs, with the first simply being called the Type A. The Type A was to be 2 meters long, 1.3 meters wide, and around the same height, with the primary focus being simplicity. The armor of this tank was to be made from a single sheet of rolled steel, which would be bent and stamped into the correct shape, with the front of the hull taking on a beveled shape, which would provide good protection without excessive thickening. Power for the Type A would come from an unspecified gasoline engine, with the vehicle being operated by a single crewman sitting in a reclined position in the vehicle. Armament was to consist of either a single medium caliber gun, or 2 machine guns mounted in a rotating turret, with 2 observation slits providing visibility for the operator. The Type A's primary objective was to provide fire support for heavy tanks during frontal assaults, and would help lay down smokescreen to provide camouflage for advancing troops. The vehicle also provided a grip on the rear of the tank to carry a single infantryman into battle, with the idea being for the vehicles to operate en masse and bring hundreds of troops to bear while providing adequate support. The other tankette design was simply known as the Type B, and demonstrated an ultra-low silhouette design, which was designed to exclusively carry a machine gun. The planned height of the Type B was to be no taller than 70 centimeters, and would use a special suspension arrangement in order to maximize mobility. The Type B was to be manned by a single crewman laying in the prone position, suspended by belts as to not be injured when driving cross-country, with steering and shifting being controlled via pedals located at leg level. Propulsion would be provided by an unspecified flat gasoline engine, which would pull in air from a vent under the lower front of the vehicle. Lem insisted in his letter that the Type B should be well armored, and if the vehicle were knocked out, the machine gun should be easily removable, as to allow the crewmen to take it and fight as an infantryman. There were additional concepts mentioned in the letter, which included plans for a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun based on a low-bodied armored car, assault guns, as well as a concept for an anti-tank missile system. Sadly, little to no information is available on these latter designs, and the original sketches seem to have disappeared for them as well. Despite all of Lem's work, none of these concepts really went anywhere, as the designs really were not very practical, and the Soviets felt they already had equipment that did the job just as well. The final vehicle we will be 60TP, which was designed in 1950, who was a cadet at the military.
Why does this have two vertical stabilizers on the wings? What is this knockoff MiG-23? Holy shit, who designed these fucking planes? Now wait a minute, how are you in my schizo layer? Well anyway, since you're here, I might as well tell you that I have a video coming up continuing these schizo polished designs, and they are worse than you think. Don't even get me started on some of these. They are the utmost hideous, questionable, and stupid designs I've seen. But anyway, please do subscribe to my channel so you can see the next part of these designs.